Welcome to IPAA's second Stewards on the Couch event for 2019. My name is Ben Barr. I'm Deputy Director General of the Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy. And I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the IPAA Advisory Council. They, like many other people, are in Townsville today, so I'm going to welcome you on their behalf. And can I start by paying my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which we meet, the Turrbal and Jagera people, and to their beliefs and customs, and to elders past, present and emerging. These events have two key focuses. One is we get to learn more about the person behind the position, who they are and what they're about. And secondly, we get to network. We get to see different people across the public purpose sphere and hang around and make new connections, and that's fantastic. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Neil Scales. I've known Neil for a few years, but I just found out that his extensive global career takes in 33 countries. So maybe someone can ask him to run through those 33 a bit later on. He's had a really distinguished career since he's come to Queensland. He was the CEO of TransLink in 2012. A year later, the Director General of the Department of Transport and Main Roads. Prior to that, he was one of the most senior public transport executives in the UK as Chief Executive and Director General of Mersey Travel in the north of England, which you'll pick up very quickly when Neil speaks shortly. He also told me he was the last Sunderland Transport Corporation apprentice, but also a Sunderland FC fan, which, you know, you've got to give some people real kudos for admitting to that in public, so that's fantastic.
The glass is always half full.
Looking forward to hearing about Neil's career, major transport projects, ferries, boats, tunnels, trains, and potentially a U-boat, is what I've been told. And we're also really lucky to have Madonna King with us, columnist, media commentator, and fantastic book writer. Great book, which I was lucky enough to read. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Madonna.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you. And goodness knows where this will go, given you've already started heckling the MC. And I won't ask you for the capital city of those 33 countries yet. But Director General, Department of Transport and Main Roads, some would say it's a poison chalice. You said it's like drinking water out of a fire hose and you do it for free. Why?
I think it's probably the most satisfying job I've ever had in the whole career I've had. And every day is different, but you get the chance to actually make a difference to the people out there, the 5 million people in Queensland, who, by the way, all think they can do a better job than me because it's easy transport. Because you've been on a bus once or driven on a road once, so it must be easy. So we're actually running an ecosystem, that's where it is. And I'm really a systems engineer, so what we're trying to do with the system is create a single integrated transport network that's accessible to everyone. Now that sounds really easy, but it's not. So the reason that I find the job satisfying is it's just an amazing opportunity to make a difference to so many people's lives, because transport touches everybody's life.
It started in the UK, as we just heard. Just give us a brief UK to Brisbane, Australia journey, career-wise.
Career-wise, I started off, I wanted to be an oceanographer because I'd seen Jacques Cousteau on the TV and I thought it was a really cool thing to do. But then the miners' strikes came along and I ended up being an apprentice because I'd worked out that I could do ordinary national certificate, higher national certificate, be a tradesman and then go to university. And there were 6 of us at home. I'm the eldest of 4, and when my dad was on strike, there's no strike money, so I was earning £10.50 a week, and that was to feed 6 of us for a while. And then I realised transport was better than being an oceanographer, and it's stayed with me ever since. So I rose up through the ranks in what was Tyne and Weir passenger transport executive, then to Manchester as Director of Engineering and Purchasing in Manchester Buses, which had 2,000 buses, biggest bus fleet outside of the UK, outside of London in the UK. Then I became a manufacturer. I used to manufacture double-deck buses, single-deck buses, airport crash tenders and fire engines. And then I went from there to work for the European Commission, the World Bank, then to Mersey Travel, and then Mersey Travel to here.
Why Brisbane, Australia?
I was headhunted for the job, and I got a a call from the recruitment consultant in November 2011 saying, do you want to work for TransLink? And the guy that preceded me, I'd known him for 30 years, Peter Strachan. And I rang him up and I said, what's this gig like? He said, oh, it's a really good gig. I said, well, why are you leaving? And he said, well, there's political issues, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm better off being back in the railway, back in the UK. So I put my hat in the ring, and they offered me the job while I was in the air on the way back. So that was quite interesting.
You said your dad was on strike, and I think you come from a long line of miners. What stopped you being a miner?
My mother. Yeah, she wouldn't let me go down the pit. It didn't work for my brother. My brother was who was younger than me, was down the pit as well. But so great-grandfather, grandfather, my dad and my brother. My dad retired at 54 with 40 years in. My grandfathers both did 50 years. My brother didn't, because he's now working for Nissan in Sunderland because the pits are shut. At nationalisation in 1944, there were 154 pits in the Durham area. And during the miners' strikes, there were 250,000 men in the mines. Now there's one pit in the Durham area, and the whole of the mining workforce is about 1,100. But he was like 2,000 foot down and 6 miles out to sea. So.
You've had a couple of milestones this week. I think your daughter turned 21 yesterday, but you also celebrated 45 years in transport.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
Yesterday. What's your favourite mode of transport?
That's a really good question. Helicopter, probably. No, sorry. I could say a drone. No, the best mode of transport for me is the bus. And my staff know when I'm on the bus, because I send loads of emails saying, good morning from the 444 bus, brackets and me, exclamation mark.
So how often do you do that?
Try to do it once a week.
And do you ask other bus passengers what they think of the service? Do you sit there quietly? Why do you do it?
This is the first city I've been in where everybody says thank you to the driver. I've never seen that before, ever, anywhere, right? So sometimes I'll talk to the driver. If the driver's done a really good job, I'll let Colin Jensen know that the driver's done a really good job. At 6 o'clock in the morning, nobody talks to anybody else, so I just get on and just do my emails. So, but you've got to actually test the system out. And once a month, I'll get the train in from Indooroopilly as well. And that gets up at Central Station. I'll walk to here. So, favourite mode of transport's the bus, mainly because that's where I served my apprenticeship, and I was a bus operator for a long time.
I want to get on to your job and leadership and some other issues, but you once bought a German U-boat, I think, for €1.
Yeah.
When and why was that?
Well, what we'd done was the Mersey ferries in 1922 were carrying about 23 million people a year. When I got to Merseyside in 97, they were carrying 750,000 people, and it was going down the tubes. And the reason it was going down the tubes is that the River Mersey at that point is a mile wide, 1.6 kilometres wide, and it's very weather dependent. So as soon as the weather went bad, which in Liverpool is pretty much every day, people would desert the Mersey ferries and use either the 2 tunnels or the trains. So what we did, we repositioned the business. So the 3 Mersey ferries, we completely rebuilt them and renamed them. And on the 3 terminals, because there's 1 terminal in Liverpool and 2 on the Wirral. On the Liverpool side, I built a new ferry terminal, put the Beatles story in. I'd built Spaceport in 1 terminal, which was the International Astronomy and Telescope Centre, which I got Brian May to open, because he's got a PhD in astrophysics. I was looking for something for the other terminal, and in 2008, the Historic Warships Museum went bump, and it had 2 submarines. It had an atomic submarine which went back to Barrow and Furness, and it had U-534, and it was just rotting away. So I went to see the owner, who was a billionaire, and I bought it for €1, and then it cost me 4.2 million to move it.
Wait, did you cut it up?
I chopped it up into 7 bits because it's 1,200 tonnes, so you can't move it by road.
And then what, stuck it together again at the other end?
Stuck 2 bits together, but I left them open because you needed to be an Olympic athlete to get through. So we left them all open so you could see inside. And the Historic Warships Museum had 4 vessels, 2 submarines and a landing craft. Best ever year was 28,000 visitors. First year of operation with a U-boat, it was 48,000.
So proved a good use for a euro, didn't it? So, let's come to Queensland and Australia. Now, over there, you were the CEO, the DG of Mersey Travel.
Yeah.
You come over here. How do you compare the two public services?
This place is so big. People don't realise how big it is until you've been working in a very small country. Because if you take what they call the Mersey Belt, which is Manchester, Warrington, Halton, and Liverpool, there's 8.6 million people in 50 miles in 80 kilometres. Here you've got like 5 million people in 1.7 million kilometres, so the distances are huge. The other thing I found is the bus service, the train service, and the ferry service here are quite good. And just an example, the busways we've got are world class. But if an Australian says they're world class, nobody believes them. But if a POM says they're world class, oh, it must be world class. So there's a difference there that the stuff we're doing is really, really good, but unless you've actually been around the world and seen other systems, it's very difficult to make that comparison. And it's interesting because I listen to people say, oh, the fares are too expensive. So I say, compared to what? Our fares are pretty reasonable here, for example. And the other thing is people say, it's all congested. I say, compared to what? You know, you should see the sort of congestion I've dealt with in Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle and London, for example. So I think the integration side of it, we're doing pretty well. But I think we just need to just lift our sights a bit, because one of the things that I found interesting as a first generation immigrant now is that in your world, you watch the news and say there'll be a volcano erupts in Jakarta or something. And it'll be on the ABC, it'll say there's been a volcano in Jakarta and no Australians were involved. And then they won't report it anymore until they find an Australian, then they'll report it. So I think we've got to get away from that, because news is news is news. But getting back to the networks, the network here is just bigger. The original TransLink area is 10,000 square kilometres, which is the biggest public transport network in the world.
Okay, but more on the public service in terms of how the public service operates, how it's seen by the public. Do you have a view on the difference between?
Well, these jobs in the UK are called permanent secretaries, and the way it works is that if you've got an expertise in transport like me, they'd give me health or education. They wouldn't give you transport. And what they do is they recruit from not the red brick universities, but the real sort of fashionable universities to where Boris Johnson went. And usually the people have got educated in classics. They're not necessarily engineers. And then they rotate them all the way around, so you can be head of the civil service, and after 5 years they move all the DGs anywhere, as a matter of course. Here we're on contract, so we're really journeymen, and there's no security of tenure. So the interesting thing is the DG cohort here are all pretty much self-selecting because we want to make a difference. In the UK, it's a definite career and a definite career path.
Does that make for better policy making when it's permanent, when you know you're not there at the behest of a government?
No, I don't think it does, because I think you get better policy here because the people that are in the DG side of it really want to be here. So I think that's one issue. The other issue, we've got 91 members here and 77 councils. In the UK, you've got 650 MPs, 3,500 lords and 6,500 councillors, and 78 million people. Yeah. So here it's a lot easier to navigate around.
Just while we're on that, just broadening it out, we have an election every 3 years. You're in a portfolio that has big infrastructure projects. Yeah. People say short-termism is a disease that we have in Australia that we have to address. Do you think that affects good public service decision making?
I think it's a real challenge, the fact that we change the feds every 3 years. I've been here 7 years, I've worked for 3 premiers and I've had 7 jobs, this one twice, for example. So I think part of the job of the DGs is to make the bits below us as stable as we possibly can, and try and look for solutions that aren't, red, blue, rainbow, green or whatever. In my world, it's a lot easier because everybody needs some access to public transport or transport in general. So I think the instability in the political system is something we need to address as Australians. Yeah. It's not necessarily a public service view. And I think the other thing that Australians are really interested in is polls. Why are we interested in polls? Like, there's been a poll and, the current Labour government are going to be out. Well, hang on a minute. It's 14 months to the election. The poll now doesn't really matter. And we don't get the polls right.
But is that unsettling, maybe not at your level or at your level, but down through the public service?
I think it could be. Part of my job is to make sure my staff, and there's over 9,000 of us in 100 locations across the state, aren't affected by that. So we've injected as much stability as we can. And the reason we've done that is just to make sure the staff are aware of everything. So I do road shows, we've got DG messages, the Deputy Directors General do their bit and below that. So we try and keep everybody up to speed. Our communications network in the department's quite sophisticated.
You're describing the job of the DG in several of these answers. How do you see the role of the DG in relation to the Minister?
He makes the policy and we execute it. So my job is to give him best advice. And if he takes that advice, great. Or if she takes that advice, great. If they don't take that advice, great. And I always give best advice, and that's part of the Westminster system. You've got to give best advice.
Is it difficult to give frank and fearless advice when there is a changing roadshow of governments often?
It can be, and it depends on the personality of the person receiving the advice. I've given advice to previous premiers who shouted at me a lot.
Well, explain, what do you mean?
If given advice to Mr. Newman was really challenging sometimes because it depended what that advice was. So I just give him the advice anyway, and he used to shout a lot. So yeah. People in the room would know what that means. Yeah.
He's an engineer.
Yeah, no, and I had a famous debate about him, which I suppose I can say now because it's not been recorded. Is that he said he was a better engineer than me because he was a combat engineer, and I said I'm a civil engineer. I'm good at building things. You're good at blowing things up.
Can I just ask for his reaction when you?
He wasn't very impressed.
Yeah,
he still took the advice though, so it was all right. To be fair to him, I think he enjoyed the debate.
Yeah. You were talking about the difference between having a specialist DG and a generalist DG. Could you do your job not being a specialist transport person?
I don't think so.
Could you? No. Would you easily transfer your skills, do you think, honestly, to another portfolio?
I think so, because I think it's because I'm an engineer, I suppose, and engineers are trained to think in a certain way and be logical. It doesn't always work, but I think this particular job, because it's so diverse, we've got 79 different work groups. Our capital programme is 23 billion over 4 years, and we've got from harbour masters to engineers to customer service experts. You've got to be able to ask the right questions, and I think if you're a generalist, you wouldn't be able to ask the right questions, and you'd get stuck. And the other thing is the immediacy of what we're trying to do. You haven't got time to go away and find information and come back. But would it translate to health? Probably. I used to teach a lot of health people when I was teaching the MBA course in the Open University. Would it transfer into social services? Probably, but I wouldn't want to go there. Would it transfer into education? Maybe. Would it transfer into, I don't know, DPC? Probably, but I think you need a specialist engineer for this job. And the three DGs that have been Transport and Main Roads, Dave Stewart, Michael Cantler beyond me, are all engineers.
You were just talking about the complicated nature of it. 3 levels of government are involved in transport, including in this city. What kind of challenges does that throw up? And is there a better way of us doing that?
I think we're overgoverned for a small population. There's only 25 million of us, and 85% of us are within 50 kilometres of the coast. There's a lot of nothing in the middle of this great country we're in. The issue we've got is just the change in political direction that flops around a bit. And if we just could settle on a series of policies in transport, so it didn't matter whether you were federal, local government or state government, they're all pointing in the same direction for the economy, I think would be all right. And what I've been trying to do over the last 7 years is get the politicians to focus on 3 things at a federal level. 1, the economy; 2, road safety and knocking the amount of road deaths on the head. And the third thing is new technology, because new technology is going to be the way to work for a better system on the economy side. So the economy, road safety and technology are the 3 things we should be looking at.
And do you put a lot of time into making good relations with your counterparts locally and federally? Is that how you
Yeah.
navigate this?
And I do about 100,000 kilometres a year, so I know all 77 mayors and their CEOs, so we get around the state a lot, and that's good because they've got a 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
Federally, pretty close to the federal ministers, but they change a lot as well. And here, I'm very close to, obviously, all our ministers.
So you just talked about how big Queensland is. How difficult is it then to deliver equity in roads and transport, given the size of our state?
It's incredibly difficult, particularly in the regions, because people in Camberwell or Mount Isa should have the same access to services that we've got in the southeast corner. And one of the things that we're going to have to sort out is 4G and 5G, for example, because in certain parts of the state, you've got a man with a fork stick with a note in it. You haven't got 4G. That was a joke. We haven't. Yeah. But bottom line is we need to get across the state good communications, right across the state. The other thing is that the tropical cyclones that we get, monsoons and just generally natural disasters, we're really good at connecting everything back up again. But we're going to have to become more resilient as a state because it's only going to get worse.
And more proactive is what you're saying.
Yeah, and we are. When we fix things, they stay fixed. But one of the problems that we've got, for example, is that after the last monsoon, which is of biblical proportions, a 1 in 500-year event, we connected everything up as we do really quickly. But Alice River Bridge was scoured underneath. And then, all the armchair experts turn up and say, well, surely you can just fix that. But if you had to look under the bridge and just saw what damage had been done, it was very difficult. So we got lots of social media out to show what the damage was. So I think the equity is a really good point. And it's not just equitable public transport or transport services, it's access to healthcare, access to education, access to all that.
You've done some work on the Peninsula Development Road between Weipa and Lakeland. What's the impact of that been on the local community there?
It's been absolutely enormous. We've sealed 173 kilometres of road while I've been here. And that's the main operating route between, as you say, Cairns, Lakeland and Weipa. And it still gets cut, but it gets cut less. And once you seal the road, the environment gets better because people don't realise, but the dust from that road will go at least 150 metres into the bush, so it looks better. We get local Indigenous organisations to do all of the cultural heritage stuff, and we've got them involved in maintenance now, so it's sustainable. And one of the immediate effects is that we've got more tourism up there quicker. So it's actually lifting the economy. The trouble is we've got some of the people saying, you're going to kill us with kindness. We don't want more tourists up here. Yeah. So we've got to deal with that. But we've got a plan now to seal the whole of the road, which is 536 kilometres long.
So just on that, you're wearing an Indigenous tie and a
pin.
A pin. And you've talked about it quite a bit. You have been an Indigenous ambassador in a sense.
I'm a champion.
Yeah. And you said, we've got to deal with this tourism issue. How do we deal with this in regional and rural Queensland?
On the tourism side or the Indigenous side?
The equity issue.
Equity issue,
some people say, the two Queenslands are not necessarily geography-based.
Yeah. I think if you look at what do we sell in Queensland, we sell mineral products, agricultural products and sunshine, right? And the sunshine bit's working really well following the success of the Com Games about a year ago. The other bits are doing, I think, pretty well. So the tourism side, I think it's okay. The Indigenous side, there's no visibility of the Indigenous issue at all from the UK, none. So I had to learn all that myself, and I've been fortunate that the department's been dealing with Mayuma in Camberwell for 20 years now. Colin Saltmere, who's an elder, he's taught me a lot about the issues and how to address it.
What has he taught you?
Well, they belong to the land rather than the land belonging to them, and they got scattered by us, really. And if you look at Woorabinda, which is my community, that was set up just during the war when we actually marched a lot of Indigenous folk down from Hopeville all the way to Woorabinda. So we took them off their land. I think the social policy of giving them money, like what they call sit-down money, has been an absolute disaster because they had the dignity of their employment and then stopped doing that. And I think actually giving them the land back has actually caused lots of problems within the families as well. So with good intent, we've actually caused more problems. So I think we're on the right path now, and the work that has been done in here by my friend and colleague, Mr. Sarah, who's the first Indigenous DG we've had. I think the work that Deputy Premier's doing in DATSIP, following on from Curtis Pitt and his work, I think is good. So I think we're getting there.
Are we building a bridge in relations to, do you think?
Reconciliation is like building a road. You've got to build it from both ends, and you've got to take them with you. So, and slowly we're getting there, really.
I think we're getting off the track a little bit, but that's fantastic. Thank you. Can I come back to, you said a moment ago, 9,000 employees. I think you said 100 different locations around the state. Really different arms when you think TransLink, office staff, ports, marine safety. How do you develop a common culture across your department, or is that not the aim?
It is the aim, and when Transport and Main Roads was put together sort of 10 years ago in March, there's basically 5 different cultures. There's the transport culture, Main Roads culture, TransLink, Road Tech, and Maritime Safety Queensland. And we've got a strapline that says 1 TMR, because we're all TMR employees. So I've started that path, the cultural path, about 6 years ago, and do it by Director General roadshows, getting out and doing the roadshow. And it's been a hard slog, because the roads bit was always separate to the transport bit, and they thought they were superior to the transport bit and all that sort of stuff. And MSQ were their own masters about when they were ports and harbours. So welding it all together has been really difficult. So what we've said is that on the communications point, you might work for Transport or TransLink or whatever, but it's still part of TMR.
In that time, we've also seen the promotion of women, not just in your department, in private industry as well. How do you think that has changed the operation of your department?
Well, there's a deliberate strategy there. We've got a hard target to actually get more women into EO8 and above, and I'm at 32% there. If you look at my leadership, executive leadership team, there's 4 women and 3 men.
But so what does it mean?
You get better debate.
Give me an example.
You just get a better debate. You get
because
more.
Women are brighter, because they bring a different perspective.
There's lots of women in the room, so both of those.
Yeah,
No, you get a different perspective.
Okay.
You've got a different emotional point of view. You've got a different perspective. They are, they've got the kids. They've actually broken the careers off to have kids and come back again. And that's one of the things we've done really well in the department, is all the flexible working that we've got.
But not all of them. Some of them would have been career public servants.
Yeah,
when you say they bring a different perspective, is it, just tell me what you mean there. You're in a meeting, and how would it be different if it was full of males?
If it's full of blokes and it's me, and I say, this is what we're going to do, they'll nod. And if I say a joke, they'll laugh at it. And even if it's the same joke, I say about 5 or 6 times, which I do just to see what happens. But the women will say, that's stupid, we shouldn't be doing that. So they bring a sort of bucket of cold water and they've got a different dimension to it. So, and it is working. We're getting better quality decisions, in my view, because it was 6 men and 1 female, one woman when I first got here. Now it's 4-3. So
what?
And they're all on merit. It's not being done by a quarter or anything.
Of course. What about the public's view of TMR? How would you describe that? What kind of adjectives would you use?
I think it depends where you are. If you take the boating fraternity and Marine Safety Queensland, the boating people probably think we're doing a really good job. If you look at the public transport side, because everybody's an expert, you've probably got a different view there, but it's only a small, in my view, small vocal minority that don't like what we're doing. On the project side, I think if you see the stuff that we've delivered over the last 5 or 6 years, I think we've done a really good job on that. Customer service side, we see 3.7 million people a year in 90 customer service centres, and we measure customer satisfaction, and it's an 8 out of 10. by an independent organisation, and airlines get 6 or 7. So the people that come in and get your license renewed, or to one of our customer service centres, or have a complicated transaction done, we're seen as I think the best, because over 80% of all the interactions with the state government are through the department. We are the front door.
So how does social media play into that? Because a social media campaign can hold up a project. It can be loud but a minority. Do you have a strategy for dealing with social media?
We do, but it doesn't always work, because the politicians go in the way. I didn't really mean that to any politicians watching. But no, I'll give you a good example. On Bribey Island Bridge, we changed the lights. We put LED lights in, which are brighter and take less maintenance. And we put a bar on top to stop the pelicans roosting on them and wrecking me lights. There was a social media storm, which is 142 Facebook posts. So now I've put the old lights back, and the pelicans have got a roost but over the water. Now that cost $400,000. Now, is that good use of public money? It is if you're a pelican, I suppose. But so it can have adverse effects. But we're using social media to actually promote what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. So if you take domestic violence or anti-domestic violence, we're using social media to actually try and eradicate that. If you look at what we're doing on accessibility, fortunately we've got Kevin Cox as our access officer, who used to be the Disability Commissioner here. But I've told him my job is to make him redundant, because we shouldn't have a bolt-on access. We shouldn't have bolt-on environment. We shouldn't have bolt-on anti-domestic violence. So we're using social media as a channel now. We're not great at it, but we're getting better. I'm using Facebook, Twitter, but mostly LinkedIn. On LinkedIn you can tell it's me, but because I'm a Sunderland supporter, when I'm tired and emotional at midnight after Sunderland's gotten beat yet again, I don't want to be anywhere near Facebook, because I might say something inappropriate.
So yeah, okay, I won't ask for your Twitter handle either, just to keep you safe. You talk about technology, so much in big data available now. How is the department using big data, or how might you use it going forward?
We've got 246 data sets we publish every year, and it's really rich data. But the data's no good unless you've got information. So you've got to mine it, and you've got to refine it to do it. People say, oh, data's the new oil. It could be, but unless it's actually useful, unless it's accurate, relevant, and timely.
But are you mining it?
Yes, we are. And we're using
it. For what type of things?
We're using it for making sure that we've got the right projects at the right place at the right time. Like the example I've used on the pelican roosts is probably one thing. We're using it on all our big projects to actually get out and tell the public what we're doing. But on the other side of the coin, we're actually capturing data on where we've got bad accidents, for example. Right? So we've got the 3 E's. We use engineering, so we engineer things out. Education, which we're doing a lot of at the moment. We put a bill through Parliament on Tuesday on road safety. And enforcement with our colleagues in the police. And the minister's just put a bill that's knocked up the fines if you're distracted driving.
Yeah,
because that's a real issue for us. So we're using that sort of data on that sort of better use our resources.
And have you got data on who might be problem drivers, for example? 17-year-olds or tradies?
We've done all that, and that's why you've got the graduated licensing system here. So you've got your learner, you've got your red peas and green peas. But what the next stage of that is, the insurance companies will start putting boxes in the cars to determine whether you're accelerating, braking too much, where you're doing, and you'll get a better.
So that's what I'm getting at, I guess. Is there partnerships that TMR will go into that will change the nature of the information you have available?
Yeah.
And is there a privacy issue that you have a strategy around there?
The privacy side's really complicated and difficult, because being a public body, we've got to make sure that we keep everybody's data private. And that is the difficulty, because there's 5.2 million vehicles in our system and probably more licenses than that. So you've got to make sure that's all secure. But if you look at the data that we've got now, we're using it on connecting autonomous vehicles, so-called driverless cars. So if you look at, it's on a scale of 1 to 5. 1's really basic, 5's fully autonomous. If you buy any car now from Europe, it's automatically a 3. Yep. So it's got lane discipline and all that
Yep.
sort of stuff on it. So the interesting thing for us, and we're trialling it now, we'll have the biggest trial in Ipswich with 500 vehicles towards the end of this year and next year, is that it's what happens to the data for that, and what happens to the insurance
Yeah.
companies and all the rest of it. So we've got that. We've got mobility as a service going on, which is using big data as well, because you'll make your decision of what mode of transport or modes of transport you use before you leave the house. And you might use one of those to pay for it, or a smartwatch,
Yeah.
or a tablet. And mobility as a service, I think, is one of the, along with connecting autonomous vehicles, is one of the most exciting things I've seen in 3 decades.
When we look at when you began in 2012 here, and all these things from the technology, the big data, the social media, increased women participation, change in culture, how has your leadership changed during that time?
I've got the same leadership style I've always had, but I've modified it now because I've just gone through the Vincent Fairfax Foundation leadership course on ethical leadership. But I use contingent management style. What does that mean? It means it's the leader, the led, the task, and the context. So I'll vary my leadership style depending on those 4 elements between tells and sells. So it depends on the situation, really.
So you say you've moderated it. Was there something that wasn't good about your leadership style, or what do you mean by
I keep on integrating it because one of the issues we've got now is millennials. You don't interview them, they interview you. And if you keep them for 5 years, I think you've done a good job. And it's all about lifestyle, you know, what they're going to get out of it, what contribution they can make out of it. So I've modified my style on that. I'll give you an example. Our last cohort of graduates, 24 graduates, I think there was 3,300 applicants. So people really do want to work for us. And part of tonight, I suppose, it's just that I'm trying to get people to see TMR as the employer of choice, and in turn the public service the employer of choice. We're doing some really cool stuff. It's just we're not very good at telling people what we're doing at it. We're absolutely appalling in the department of actually telling people all this good stuff we're doing. Whereas, you know, our colleagues in Victoria will go to the opening of an envelope. We just do some really cool stuff, then move on.
What do you do really well as a leader?
Probably motivation and leadership. Well, the leadership side, support the staff, make sure we're integrating new technology, make sure we're ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. And I tell the people all the time, do you want to be an agent of change, or do you want to be a victim of change? I know where I want to be.
Is there a lesson you've learnt along the way? A hard lesson?
It doesn't pay to make predictions. And I do it all the time because I can't help myself, and usually I get it wrong. But I try and make sure that we're making decisions based on information and proper data. But it's like I tell our people, the only thing you can say about a business plan is it'll be wrong, because you haven't got perfect information that changes like in real time. So you get 85-95% of the way, and then that'll do. But I think the explosion in technology, things like social media, the turbulence we've got actually not just in the world political sort of system, but here in Australia and in the state, we just need to make sure we integrate that and just keep our eyes on the prize, which is a single integrated transport network, accessible to everyone.
You told me you have 3 mentors.
Yep.
If there's a young public servant here, or a middle manager who's looking for a mentor, what should they look for? Someone inside their department or outside, someone from the same gender, opposite?
I wouldn't have somebody, if it was somebody that really wanted to get on, I'd have a mentor from probably outside the department, because then they can ask the silly questions that you might not ask if you're part of the same department. I think I'd be interested as well as finding out where that individual wanted to go. And you wouldn't necessarily get from A to B to C. Sometimes you got to go to X and Y and then come back again. Do they really want to be in the public service, or do they want to be in the private sector, or do they want not-for-profit? Because there's 3 distinct areas there. Do they see a career going forward for 25 years? Because the millennials, 40% of their jobs probably haven't been invented yet. So I think mentorship, I've got 4 mentees myself, but I really carefully choose them. And then I do it for the senior leadership team. There's 41 of them anyway. And what we're doing, the senior leadership team, we deliberately move people around from, say, MSQ to TransLink or from transport to whatever. It's a deliberate strategy. So mentors and mentees are really difficult, and you've got to have a really good relationship, and it starts with trust. And you've got to work out what you want out of it, because you can get a lot out of it as well. And the key thing is you've got to have the time to do it. Because if you've got a mentee and he turns up or she turns up and you only give them 5 minutes, it's not going to work.
So you've got a job going for middle management, but you know, a senior middle management in the department, and I lob up as an applicant. What are you looking for?
Well, by the time you get through the process, we're all clever enough, right? So assume we're all clever enough and can do it. Next thing I'm looking for is, are you agile? What does that mean? One is, are you resilient? And two, are you committed to lifelong learning? And then the third bit, are you a good cultural fit? And sometimes you can only test that by actually appointing a person and put them in a role.
How much important is work-life balance for your employees?
Oh, it's incredibly important to me, and I instill that in everyone I meet. And it's like what I say to them: look, if your child or your grandchild's doing a sports day, or there's some function at school, go to it.
Do you?
Yeah, I did. Because if you don't, they'll remind you. But they'll remind you 20 years later that you didn't turn up. So that's really important. And was that meeting or was that sort of, briefing so important that you couldn't go to your school or your kid's school or whatever? So that's really important. The other thing is that what we've done in the department is we've got loads of flexible working. We've got compressed hours, part-time working from home, flexible return after sort of having a family. We haven't done enough yet, but I think we're getting there. And that's one of the things where millennials, for example, are showing the way that they'll much rather stay with an organisation.
What can TMR do better?
We could be faster on our feet, and we could promote what we're doing a bit more. We're just not moving fast enough, but that's probably the same story in all 25 bits or 23 bits of the public service here. I think we're doing a pretty good job. I think we just got to keep at it.
Recent years have brought some testing times. How close do you think you are at getting it right?
I don't think I'll ever get it right. I'm a Sunderland supporter. But I think if you get it 95% of the way right, I think you're pretty much there. I think, if you take a bell curve of a population and you do something, or if I'm doing a piece of communication, you'll get 2.5% who think you're an idiot, and 2.5% at the other end that think you're a hero. And the 95% in the middle say, yeah, it's all right. Yeah. That's what you get. And then the best I've ever got is like 1% thought I was an idiot, and 1% thought I was a hero, and so 98% in the middle thought it was all right. And that's life, isn't it, really? It's like you can't get it 100% right all the time.
Cross River Rail will change the nature of our city a bit. How do you see its impact, both in I guess, the project being built and its operation?
I think the building side, because I'm on the board, I suppose, we need it, and we need it now. So the sooner it's built, the better. We've got the trains to go through it. We know it's a twin 7-metre diameter tube. It will seriously step change in a positive way the public transport offering. Now, if we don't do it, the city will just choke up. So, but it's not just that. You've got Queen's Wharf, which is just out there. You've got the Metro project. You've got the $23 billion worth of other stuff that we're going to deliver as well as the stuff that Minister Dick's got going on as well. The capital programme, I think, for the state is about 40, 50 billion. So you need all of that because we're a growing state.
But how it will be an inconvenience while it's being built, presumably. But how will it change the makeup of our city?
I think you'll attract and retain more people to the public transport network because congestion's a function of economic activity. So the roads are going to get more congestion. So you're going to get people going back to public and more active transport where you can actually guarantee the journey time. And a lot of our work in the future is going to be on guaranteed journey times, whether it's in bus, rail, ferry, tram, or whatever. And the other thing we're doing at the moment is that every time we build something, we're actually putting a bike lane next to it, for example. Why is that? 2 out of 3 Queenslanders are overweight, and we're starting to get obesity in kids. So if we start, getting them used to cycling now and more active, it's going to work. Because when I knew Australians in like the 70s and 80s, they're all really fit, and they're spoken in a language that I couldn't really understand. And they were very fit people, and now I look and I think, not so much now. Well, I'm no Adonis. I should be about 8'6" for my weight.
But you've really
yeah.
seen a change.
I've seen a change, yeah. We're becoming Americanized.
If you were infrastructure minister for a day, what is the big piece of infrastructure you would like to see in this state that we're not talking about or thinking about?
We probably should, if I was for a day, I wouldn't get much done because transport's over years, but I think we need the tram network back or dedicated busways back. Our busways here, we've got 28 kilometres, we need more of them. Because if you can guarantee journey times, people will go back. And the railway, there are three determinants really for people being attracted to the railway. One was pricing, which I think we've done. Second one is price of fuel. If it gets to $1.50 for diesel, to see people coming back. And the third part is the number of people working in the city, in the CBD, and that's on the up again. So that will automatically get people back onto the network. And because it's 25,000 volts AC overhead, it means it can be clean and green at point of use. So I think more fixed forms of transport I'd put back, make the investment in the infrastructure.
You said a couple of times, the aim is a fully integrated transport system. What's the date that we can expect that? What have you got in your calendar?
26, 25, I've got no idea.
Is it reasonable? Is it something, or is it a pipe dream?
It's not a pipe dream. I think we can get there. I think we've got there now, roughly. But to get fully integrated, you need mobility as a service, connecting autonomous vehicles, and everything delivered. Right? And if you, it's like I used to tell my people about in Mersey travel. If you aim for best in the UK, your target goes down. If you say, let's have a European class, you become best in the UK. So what we aspire to in Merseyside is world class. So we'll be best in Europe. So we're looking for a world-class transport network here. The people deserve it. Why shouldn't we have a world-class transport network?
Absolutely. So what's the issue that keeps you awake at night?
People, the staff. I worry about the staff.
What kind of things?
Well, are we burning them out? Are we giving them enough support? Are we giving them flexibility? Are we giving them training opportunities? Are we looking after them properly?
Do you think you are?
Doing my best, yeah. Probably not, mainly because I think there's a lot of us, but that's why I do 100,000 kilometres a year. That's why I do all the DG roadshows myself. That's why I get out and about. It can be it's challenging just because of the geography, but are we doing enough? Probably not. Are we on the right track? Yeah, we are. And things like, domestic violence, which I hate, and, it just can't be right that 2 women a week are killed by perpetrators. Access for everybody, it can't be right that everybody hasn't got universal access. Equity, it can't be right that we haven't got the right amount of equity. The environment, we need to be looking after that because we're only borrowing the world from our children and grandchildren. So are we doing all the right things? Yeah, we are. Are we doing enough? Probably not. Am I doing enough? If I thought I was doing enough, I'd stop. So I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Time, I think, to ask what other questions we might have.
Ben, you've got to spring into action now. This is your job.
Please don't be shy. Who's got the first question?
We've got a roving mic.
Yeah, and I'll go back to him afterwards. Yes. Who's first? Come on.
I should have done simultaneous translation, shouldn't I, really?
Yeah, so this gentleman first, thank you. And then we'll go to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Will Goodison from PwC. With regards to the health and wellness that you were talking about, I was in a workshop this morning with Queensland Health. They've acknowledged it's a massive problem in their workforce. Are there any particular incentives that you are looking at with your staff? Is there anything that you look to target depending on where they're located? I know that you say it's something that does keep you up and it's something we've noticed across the state. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, we've used the Michael Walsh, my colleague in health, he's got a thing called My Health for Life, which is free screening. So we've put that right across the department and we've promoted and we've probably saved 2 lives. When Michael Calabiani had this job, he turned off all of the executive health screening we had. I turned that straight back on. We saved about 3 lives. I'm encouraging people to cycle. We have cycling champions who's in the room. Matthew. Last time I was on a bike, I came off the bike 40 years ago and I went flying through there and degloved my knees. The last person to get me on a bike was the Bishop of Liverpool, right? And there's a story behind that. So we're encouraging a lot of cycling, so end of trip facilities we've got. So we're also at Castledine, which is where our, we've got 900 people at Castledine. There's a football field next to it and we encourage, soccer field next to it, so we encourage soccer. So we're encouraging all that sort of stuff as well. But just look after yourselves, look after your family, look after your mates. Now, on my DG messages, which go out, which some of your staff actually read, most of it's, I think, on auto-delete. It says there at the bottom, look after yourselves. And it's really important you keep on reinforcing that message. And it's like a treadmill as well. Once you're on that treadmill, you kind of get off, or the 1% or 2% would think you're an idiot. Or just say, oh, I see, he wasn't really committed to it. So we're using our position power to put as many cycle lanes as we can and promote that. End of trip facilities, which have got to be right. We encourage a lot of our people to use the public transport network and do walk, and then the public transport side as well. So, and just look after each other. One of the things that I use is that if you're in your car, right? You're in your car and you're driving home. Just look at yourself in the mirror sometimes and you find your face is all screwed up because you'll be thinking something about work or whatever. Just try and relax. Just think about that because it's not worth killing yourself for because the work will be here when we're not. So it's active participation. It's making sure. And I've got this watch on because I've had it a long time and it's a really good watch. But I'm obsessed with this bloody smartwatch and making sure that I complete the circles. So I haven't got this to actually tell the time. I've got this because I have a heartbeat. Yes, Ben, I've got a heart, yeah. So I've got targets on walking, standing and physical exercise. And I get really brassed off if I don't do the physical exercise.
Okay, so if we can take the microphone to this lady, but just to follow up while we're doing that, in terms of, is there a cohort in your department that does worry you more in this way? Young ones coming in and it's 9,000 others,
no.
Your senior executives?
No, they're all the same. They're all staff.
Yeah, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kate Joyner. I'm from QUTX. So QUTX prepares executives, for the 21st century. So, Neil, can you tell us about how we should be thinking about preparing executives perhaps for the next 10 years? So an executive that your recruitment maybe in 2010, how's it going to be different in 2020 and maybe beyond?
It's a really good question, I think. And I think I'm one of your mentors. Yeah. So I think...
Did you give her that question?
No.
Okay, just checking. Yeah.
Best $50 I've ever spent. No, I think use of new technology. I think the rise of social media. I think the fact you've got to be more resilient. I think you've got to commit to lifelong learning. And one of the things that you're going to have to do on your course is say that's just the start. And your strapline is the university for the real world. And I think you're probably right on that. I think where you are in academia, because I used to be in academia in Open University on the MBA program in the business school. And we found by the time we'd got the stuff written and the materials written, it was out of date. So you're somehow going to have to actually keep the thing out of date. The other thing is that the MBX course is just a mental assault course. It's just teaching you how to think in a business sense as well. So I think one of the things that we're going to have to deal with in the future is probably not emotional quotient, but political quotient, because the politics are now really starting to worry me with the rise of Trump and Boris, for example, in the UK, and ScoMo here to a lesser extent, where they've got no real policies. As far as I can see, it's all about the individual. So you're going to have to teach your people to actually look behind that as well. So the questioning side, use of new technology, agile, making sure you've got a commitment to lifelong learning, I think is where I'd be looking. But if you look at Boris, one of my mates in the UK is Sir Peter Hendy, who used to be me in London when I was in Merseyside. We went to the opening of a bus depot with Boris. He brought the wrong bloody speech, right? So he said the whole of the wrong speech in Latin and got away with it.
I think that's his shtick. I've heard Annabelle Crabb say he does that deliberately to make himself look like a man of the people.
Well, he's a really clever man, but whether he's a man of the people or not, I don't know. He's a multi-millionaire that was educated at Eton. And the other thing I should tell you as well, that because of my accent, which is from the northeast, I'd never get a permanent secretary's job in the UK at all. It's very, very...
After the vote today, he's certainly not a man of the parliament, is he? No. But your comments there about Scott Morrison, Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, they're quite political in a sense. Well, are you political yourself?
No. No, I can't be. I will be when I'm retired and I become angry from Pullenville and I'm writing all these letters. But
people wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and I can't be. I'm just making a comment on the people that's ruling our lives, because you think, well, so okay, well, Trump, what does he do? Well, he affects China. China's our biggest trading partner. Could be. Scoremore, who's probably a really nice guy. You know, he's affecting, you know, how Australians live and work and breathe going forward.
In what way?
Well, he's setting the policy. You know.
Yeah, is there a particular policy that you...
I don't think he's got any. That's my problem.
Yeah. Okay, is there another question? We're almost out of time.
Are we?
Yeah, please. Thank you. Yeah, here's a mic.
Kim Papel here from Corrective Services. You've mentioned social media use a number of times to try and influence sentiment. Do you measure your effectiveness on social media? If so, how?
Yeah, we measure it every week. So we measure positive stories, negative stories. We measure reach. Personally, I look at the LinkedIn posts that I do and see how many people I either just done a thumbs up or done a comment. And the most interesting thing for me is when I got my Vincent Fairfax Fellowship for the Ethical Leadership course, my daughter took the picture of me getting the certificate. And I posted up and I said something like, I can't ask my staff to be committed to lifelong learning if I'm not doing it myself. And this is me getting my certificate. That had 33,000 hits, which just amazed me. So I think just the power of it, but it depends what it is. And the thing is that if I watch my kids that communicate to each other by smartphone, even when they're sitting like a meter away from each other, they're just going flicking from thing to thing to thing. And then you look at, you know, my son's always on Netflix. He's always doing this. So what we've got to watch as a group, the attention span's getting really, really, really short. And people are saying, well, summarize social policy for me in half a page and tell me in 7 seconds. We're going to have to watch that. And if you take your area, when I was on the MBA course at UK for the Open University, I used to teach people in your field, and you'd get a Secretary of State that would come in and he'd say, right, lock them up. So they'd move all the policies to incarcerate all these offenders. You know, the Secretary of State will come and let them out. So they'd have to move the super tanker at 90 degrees. And that was after, that was just one example. Now, social media can do the same, like the Pelicans on Bribery Island Bridge, where it can be used for, you know, good, but it can be used for things that are not so good.
And these young people are our clients and our customers, aren't
Exactly,
they?
yeah.
All right.
We spend a lot of time, for example, on our Facebook moderator, and that's actually dealing with people that's got a real complaint in a fun way, in a positive way. I'll give you an example. So Mrs. Miggins, or Angry from Pullenville, has got a problem on the 444 bus, so she writes in, right? So then I write a response and send it away. By the time it gets through our system and gets to Mrs. Miggins, it's like 2 weeks later. And she's forgot about the problem she had on the 444. Then she gets a letter from me, she goes, ah! And gets all angry again. So what I do as a DG, which is really unusual, if we get an issue like that, I ring the person up. What are you ringing me for? Well, you've complained. Well, why is the DG ringing us? Well, you complained to me, so I'm ringing you up. So you get if you can do that, and you can't do it all the time, but if you can have the personal touch, it does not make a difference.
Yeah, Gail Kelly, the former CEO of a bank, obviously says she would do that each Friday afternoon, just pick up the phone and ring a customer, and she was hung up on most times because they didn't believe for one moment it was her.
That was a crank call, yeah.
We're nearly out of time, but I am told that you're a season ticket holder of the Broncos and you got 8 out of 8 last week in the
Ready out of it in the footy tips, yay!
Yeah, so all right, so you're going to tell us what they are tonight. Tonight's Rabbitohs and Roosters.
Rabbits.
Eels and Sea Eagles.
Eels.
Storm and Cowboys.
Storm.
Raiders and Warriors.
Raiders. Unless it's a different Warrior team that terms it. You never tell with the Warriors because they've got 2 teams.
Bulldogs and Broncos.
Bronx.
Titans and Dragons.
Dragons.
Tigers and Sharks.
Tigers.
And Panthers and Knights.
Knights.
Has he got them right, do you think?
We'll see.
We'll wait and see.
On Sunday night.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Neil Stokes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madonna. That was a fantastic interview. Really well handled. We covered so much ground. Data mining, coal mining, pelicans, Indigenous affairs, Queen's lead guitarist, the Bishop of Liverpool. Learn a lot and, wanted to frantically write down notes about some of the things that Neil was saying. It was fantastic. So once more, can I ask everyone to thank both Neil and Madonna? Just a couple more things from me before we get to the second really critical part, which is the refreshments outside. I just wanted to thank everyone for turning up tonight as well. We've got about 25 individual members tonight. Individual membership of IPAA is fantastic. You get to come to these events for free. I'm a member, you get a little star on your badge too. That makes me feel very good. And you get access to what IPAA's about connecting with people, about challenging your thinking and really thinking about public purpose and how you're going to make a difference, and that's a great thing. So I encourage you, if you're interested in membership, look outside, there's brochures, and you can connect with IPAA on social media, on LinkedIn, or on the website, so get out there and look. Before I leave though, also IPAA's growing and it's partnering with a range of organisations, and I want to look at my notes and mention them and thank them for their partnership. So QUT, Griffiths and UQ, BDO, Cube Group, Davidson's, Deloitte, Holden Redlich, KPMG and Bright People, and of course lots of great Queensland government agencies.